Welcome to the tutorial on how to write an excellent resume. In it, you will learn what sections to put on your resume or CV, the difference between a resume and a CV in the United States, how to customize your resume or CV, the differences between resumes when applying to a private company, a nonprofit, teaching position, state and local government, academia, or an allied health field. Also, what mistakes to avoid when writing your resume, and how to make your resume stand out from the crowd. An excellent resume and cover letter is crucial to your job or internship search. You see, the resume is what gets you an interview. The interview is what gets you the position. In this tutorial, we will look at how to create an industry resume. That is, a resume for a private company or nonprofit. How this differs from writing a curriculum vitae, also known as a CV, for pursuing the academic career path, or for elementary or secondary education, and resumes for healthcare professions will also be discussed here. Writing a resume for a position with the United States government and writing a cover letter for any position will be covered in separate tutorials. You will likely get different advice about writing a resume from each person you ask. This can be due to the fact that there are several right ways to write one, or that some people could give you outdated or just plain wrong advice. We want you to know where the advice in this video comes from. This is important to understand so you can weigh our advice against the other advice you will receive. First, the information in this tutorial comes from research called Current Best Practices for Resume Writing. There are actually researchers out there who ask recruiters questions like, how many pages should a resume be? What fonts look most professional? And what sections should a resume have and in what order? Everything from the big picture to the tiniest detail. Best Practices for Resume Writing is a great guide for writing an excellent resume, but it does change over time. That's one of the reasons you may get different advice from different people about your resume, so beware. If the person giving you advice is or has been a recruiter in the last 5 years, great. They are likely aware of current trends in resume writing. If they haven't had to write or look at a resume in more than 5 years, they may be giving you outdated advice. Also, Best Practices for Resume Writing contains a lot of information that can even be conflicting at times. Since most people who come to us for help want to make the process easier, we've chosen just one of the acceptable ways to write an industry resume for those groups. That's what will be presented in this tutorial. Keep in mind, though, that it matters who the individual is who ends up looking at your resume. Since this is the person who will be making decisions about you as a candidate, whenever possible, you should include advice from that person, or a trusted source within the organization you're applying to, if you can get it. In the end, by following the advice in this tutorial, you can be confident that you will know how to create an excellent industry resume that won't miss any important points and will stand out from the crowd. Another thing to keep in mind, this advice is for resumes within the United States. Other countries will have different expectations for excellent resumes. For example, it is not considered appropriate for you to put your photo, marital status, or visa information on a U.S. resume, but it is customary in some other countries. Be sure to research resume best practices for other specific countries if you're trying to get a position there. Finally, we'll be giving you a lot of information during this video, so if you're working on writing your resume while you watch or listen, consider pausing it after each section so you'll have all the time you need to apply this advice to your situation. At the end of this video, you'll find contact information for your Career Development Center. Feel free to ask for help if you want or need it. Okay, let's get started on your exceptional resume. First, the big picture advice. It is very important in most cases to fit your industry resume onto one page. This is so for several reasons. First, it's what most private companies and some nonprofits are expecting. There are also issues related to the organization's process that you can run into if your resume is more than one page, including them losing a page or getting bored and not even reading your whole resume. You can employ all kinds of techniques to try to prevent this, but ultimately, you can't control how they print and/or distribute your materials once they have them. So make it easier on yourself and your candidacy and make it one page. Some things you can do to reduce your resume to one page include: extend the margins up to 1/2 inch or 2 to 3 centimeters from the edge of the paper. Reduce the font size. We recommend it be no smaller than font size 11, depending on the type of font you choose. This gets too hard for some people to read. Eliminate your high school information and achievements. This is a must after your second year of university anyway. After that point, organizations are no longer interested in what you did in high school, just what you've done since then. And be more efficient about how you write the information you do include on your resume. We'll talk about how to construct efficient, specific statements for your resume shortly. Exceptions to this one-page advice are: 1. If you have so much relevant experience to talk about that it would hurt your candidacy if you left it out. This especially applies to people who already have professional experience before they go or go back to school. 2. When you're applying for a position with a U.S. federal, state, and local government organization, creating a CV for the academic or research career path, applying for a secondary school teaching position, and to some allied health positions. As mentioned earlier, we will cover federal resumes in a separate tutorial, but details about the others will be covered at the end of this tutorial. Use your judgment when applying this exception, or ask your career development office. We're here to help, as you like. Do the work that it takes to make a stock resume. Then, each time you go to apply for a position, you can select the most relevant information, format it, and modify some of the language to fit the position. A stock resume will have all your experience and qualifications in it, no matter how diverse they are. Not only does this help you customize for a specific position, it will help you remember all the things you've done professionally. This may not be hard for you now if you're just starting your professional life, but it will get more difficult as you blaze your individual career path. Next, best practices research has shown that the most professional-looking fonts are the ones with serifs. New Times Roman, Cambria, and Book Antigua are all examples of this. You can even use 2 fonts, one for titles, one for bullet points. This can help separate and visually categorize information. Whatever font you choose, make sure that it comes through clearly when it is printed or saved as a PDF. There are cases where fonts can obscure a person's exact email address, preventing an employer from getting in contact with the candidate. This is a small detail, but definitely the type of situation you want to avoid. And now, a note on formatting. There are many ways to deal with formatting on your resume. The most important rule is, whichever way you choose to format it, be consistent. People who look at resumes for a living get annoyed by too many different fonts, fonts that are too fancy, bullet points that don't line up, or even dates that are not formatted the same. These may be small details to you and me, but to someone evaluating your resume, it could mean the difference between being eliminated from their process or continuing on as a viable candidate. The best way to address formatting while you are writing your resume is to write it all out, then go back and be meticulous about getting the bullet points and lines to align the way they should be. There isn't anything more frustrating in resume writing than formatting as you go along, only to decide to change something partway through, then trying to go back and reformat from the beginning in a consistent-looking way. Don't believe me? Try it. I think you'll find that you'll save a lot of hassle by saving the formatting for one of the finishing touches. Here are the sections we recommend you have on your industry resume: header, summary of qualifications, education, relevant experience, and possibly one other like interests or awards, for example, in that order. In the header, include your name, email address, phone number, and where you're from. It's not necessary to include your entire street address. City and state will be enough. We also advise you to put your LinkedIn URL in this area. The LinkedIn URL will help direct a potential future employer to even more positive, professional information about you, and perhaps help you feel better about the fact you had to keep this document down to one page since LinkedIn has no space limit. Your name should be the largest font on the page. Make it really stand out. Next, you should make sure you have a professional-looking email address. Did you know that you can keep your NAU email forever? Yay! Now, if you want to use that one for a resume, we suggest you customize it so that it'll look less like spam to a potential employer. A professional-looking email is one with part or all of your first and last names in it. You request this by following the instructions at nau.edu/its/services/google/email_alias, or by searching NAU's web pages for Customize NAU Email ITS. Following the instructions there will allow you to request a professional-looking email. But don't worry, your original email will still work. You'll still log into the same place and you'll still see all the emails there regardless of which address a person sent it to. Next, make sure the voicemail message associated with your phone number is professional sounding too. When you think it could be a potential employer calling, only answer your phone if you're in a place free of distractions and background noise, and only then if you have time to talk. Otherwise, let your voicemail pick up and call them back when you're in a better location and/or have the time to talk. In the past, the next section on an industry resume would have been the objective. The problem with those was no matter how hard you tried or how good of a writer you were, they always came out sounding generic and many times boring. Is that the very first thing after our names that we want a potential future employer looking at? No! Thankfully, nowadays, we have the Summary of Qualifications, also known as the Qualifications Summary. This is a bulleted list of your skills, ideally the skills you have that relate most closely to the position you're applying for. And how awesome is this? You'll find an extensive list of those skills in the employer's job description. Just pick the skills you possess that they've already identified they need. Add others that are relevant to the position. If there is no job description, use the organization's website. There will usually be a mission and vision statement, and possibly even a description of their ideal candidates. For each bullet point, list one of your skills, but also rate yourself in that skill as you feel you compare to others at your same stage of experience and education. For example, instead of just listing Microsoft Excel, say proficient in Microsoft Excel or excellent at Microsoft Excel. Other statements you can start with are X years of experience with, fantastic skills in, intermediate knowledge of, strong abilities with, extensive knowledge of, demonstrated capabilities with. You get the point. The only statement that has a professional definition to it is expert. If you want to say that you're an expert at something, make sure it's a skill you have at least 5 years of full-time experience with. You can even use phrases like basic understanding of or foundational knowledge of. Occasionally, in this section, you can even say enthusiastic to learn more about. This is for use when there's a skill the organization has identified as important and you haven't gotten a chance to practice it yet. This last technique could come in particularly handy if it's a computer that's scanning your resume before a human is able to. It also shows a hiring manager that you know what they're looking for and are willing to learn. But don't overdo it. Use this trick no more than once on any given resume. You'll mostly want to focus on skills you already have. Now that you've thrilled, education is the next most relevant thing about you to a potential employer. It is one place where employers determine if you are minimally qualified for the position. In this section, you'll want to include where you go to school, what your major is, your GPA, and your expected graduation date. It is even possible to include academic awards in this section, like Dean's List and scholarships you've been awarded. Just don't forget to include dates for those achievements too. As a side note, anything on your resume with dates associated needs to go in reverse chronological order. That means the most recent school attended, award achieved, or experience had goes at the top of the list. If you're a professional with years of experience who has come back to update your degree, you can put either education or experience here. However, consider placing education before experience, even though you've probably been doing it the other way around for a while. Since, presumably, you'll be getting a new degree and using that one in your career from then on, the education section will help inform a potential employer of your skill updates. On to experience. The goal of this section is to emphasize your experiences as they relate to the job you're applying for. As with the Summary of Qualifications section, you'll want to use the position description that the employer has written and/or the organization's web pages to address what they're really looking for. This is where many students and new grads sometimes get stuck. I don't have any professional experience. I've never had a job. My job wasn't related to my degree. The good news is, since this section is called Relevant Experience, you may include part-time jobs, volunteer experiences, class projects, study abroad, even hobbies you have if they relate to the position you're applying for. Any experiences you've had in your life that are relevant to the position can go in this section. After you've had 2 to 3 years of experience with your current degree, you'll want to title this section Professional Experience and emphasize only work you've been paid to do. So, while you're a student or new grad, live it up. Use the Relevant Experience section to highlight how you're a great fit for the position. Next, you might ask, why would XYZ organization care about the summer job I had at the mall or the volunteering I did at the animal shelter? How can I describe my military experience in a way that'll make sense? This is why and how. Transferable skills. Transferable skills are skills that all employers want, no matter what the business is. In a recent nationwide survey, employers identified the following skills as the top 10 they want students and new grads to have. 1. Leadership. 2. Ability to work in a team. 3. Written communication skills. 4. Problem-solving skills. 5. Strong work ethic. 6. Analytical, quantitative skills. 7. Technical skills. 8. Verbal communication skills. 9. Initiative. And 10. Computer skills. Other skills that are highly sought after include ranked in order, flexibility and adaptability, interpersonal skills, or relating well to others, detail-oriented, organizational ability, strategic planning skills, and a friendly and outgoing personality. Chances are that you've used these skills in any number of your life experiences, so if you are at a loss as to how to relate your experiences to a specific job, highlight as many of these as possible in this section on your resume. This is also a great technique when there isn't a specific job description available to work off of. So, look over the position description in detail. Notice the skills and tasks they are looking for a successful candidate to have or do. Think about experiences in your life that demonstrate you have these skills or have done these tasks. Next, make a list of experiences you'll likely use on the resume for this position. For each experience, you'll need to include the name of the experience, like which organization you did the work for or the name of the class you did the project in. You'll also want to mention your title, the location of the experience, and the time span you participated in that experience. You can organize these details in a number of ways. Just remember to use the same exact formatting for every experience in this section. Also, the use of bold and italics often comes in handy here to make it easier for the person scanning your resume to quickly digest the information. Below this identifying information for each experience, you'll formulate 3 or 4 bullet points that showcase the skills you learned and/or practiced during your time with that experience. Many people are too specific or too general. If you're too specific, an employer won't be able to see how the bullet point is relevant to their needs. For example, saying, "Worked at the cash register dealing with customers and taking payment for the services provided while upholding the company's code of ethics" could confuse an employer. If you're too general, you will not capture the attention of the employer and make them think you're an exceptional candidate for the position. For example, saying, "Worked at the cash register" doesn't necessarily help an employer fully visualize what you did, and also could make them feel like that action is not relevant to the job you're applying to. A much better alternative for this statement could be responsible for hundreds of dollars of transactions per day with 0 errors in accounting in 6 months of employment. This is specific enough to allow the employer to visualize your actions and get an idea of your attention to detail as well as your integrity. Here are several techniques to ensure you are writing quality bullet points for your experiences. First, start each bullet point with an action verb. This will help the person scanning your resume to feel energized and keep reading. Next, you'll want to specify. Instead of a bullet reading, "responsible for stocking shelves," say, "updated inventory and tracked shipments of new merchandise." You'll also want to quantify. Now, quantifying isn't about impressing them with numbers. The technique actually allows the employer to imagine you and your skills more vividly, making you stand out in their mind. You'll also want to highlight outcomes. Instead of just saying, "duties included answering phones and transferring calls," perhaps you could elaborate with something like, "directed callers to appropriate contacts quickly and efficiently, minimizing caller wait times." That last part, minimizing caller wait times, is the outcome of your action. Finally, keep your choice of words and descriptions positive. This will help them imagine you as a positive person. Instead of saying, "tried to maintain professionalism even with coworkers who were petty and confrontational," maybe another way to describe the situation would be, "developed ability to focus on tasks with high level of attention to detail." When you are applying for a specific position, it is always best to be sure to also include as much of the terminology that the employer has indicated on the job description that you have experience with. This terminology can include software typically used, quality standards, desired characteristics, tools used in that career path, etc. These can also be found through your knowledge of the relevant industry terminology, which you would have learned in classes or via your research of that industry. Remember, it can be only basic or foundational experience. You don't have to be an expert with the specific things they list in order to put them on the resume. Date search, the process for an employer is not about selection, it's about elimination. And since your resume and cover letter are many times the first thing an employer sees from you, it's very important to ensure that nothing in your resume or cover letter are likely to get you eliminated from the stack. Here are a few things that could get you eliminated. 1. Any typos whatsoever. 2. Inconsistent formatting, such as bullet points that don't line up or dates that aren't formatted the same. 3. Negative statements of any kind. It doesn't matter how bad the experience was or how accurate your statement is. Negative statements lead employers to conclude that you are a negative person. So focus only on the positive outcomes from the experience. We recommend you get your resume and cover letter reviewed by at least 3 people. They don't have to know anything about resume writing, but should have a good eye for grammar, spelling, and formatting inconsistencies. They can also comment on if any statements need to be phrased in a more positive way. This can be done by friends, family members, professors, anyone really. Make sure you also get it reviewed by at least one person who does know about current best practices for resumes, though. They'll be able to point out any details that your other reviewers might have missed. Always save your cover letter and resume as a PDF. This will ensure that all your hard work in making them look professional will show up the same on the computer screen of the person considering you as a candidate. A great format to use when naming the PDF is your name _ the position title and the position number _ the date.pdf. The position title and number are those generated by the organization you're applying to. The date can be written as month and year. This will help the employer keep track of you in their system and looks much more professional than myresume.pdf or joesmithresume1.pdf. The absolute best advice we can give you is to become very familiar with the job description and website of the organization you're applying to. Then, use these to draft a customized resume for that position by modifying the summary of qualifications and bullet points in your relevant experience section of your resume to address the skills you have that they've identified as needing. This is what it means to customize your resume. Customizing your resume and cover letter to send to 30 organizations will get you a much higher response than creating a generic resume and cover letter and sending them out to hundreds of organizations. We understand that for many people, creating a distinct resume for 30 organizations could seem impossible. Here's a tip to make that easier on you. It starts with the job descriptions. It's likely that you're looking for a particular type of job, say an entry-level mechanical engineering position in the aerospace industry, or a chemistry internship in forensics, or a high school math teaching position. Here's what you do. Find as many job descriptions as you can that pertain to that category of opportunity you're interested in and compare them. It is likely that they have many requirements and desired skills in common. Write your resume based on what they have in common. Then, when you're getting ready to submit for an opportunity, you can scan the specific job description for any particulars you'd like to add to your already mostly customized resume. Creating a customized cover letter has a similar shortcut. See the tutorial on cover letters to discover how. Finally, as promised in the beginning, here are some notes on creating a CV or resume for a high school teaching position or a position in healthcare. The good news is that much of the above advice applies for each of these different resume types. Here are the specific ways in which they differ. Creating a CV is heavily focused on your research experience. You'll want to have additional sections titled Research Experience and also one titled Publications. You can still use the relevant experience section described above, but will want to keep all of your experience related to research in the section with that name. If you have any publications to list, you'll want to make sure they follow a consistent format, much like how references are listed on a term paper. Another possible section to include on a CV is Conferences, where you can highlight conferences you have attended or presented at, whether it be a talk or a poster session. Much of this experience on a CV will come with some years in the field. However, if you have any of them now, be sure to call them out on your CV. For a high school teaching position, you'll want to have an additional section titled Teaching Experience. Again, you can keep the relevant experience section as described above, but be sure to place all your teaching experience in the section with that name. For the positions in healthcare, much of the above advice is pertinent. Additional sections you'll consider including are clinical experience and certifications. Again, calling out these aspects of this career path that are very important to showing oneself as a quality candidate. The final note about these special cases, the one-page rule does not apply. These audiences are either value more content if it exists, or they just don't expect your resume to be that brief. As always, contact your NAU Career Center for assistance on any career-related questions you might have, including resume and cover letter reviews, LinkedIn help, and mock interviews, and for you to reach out. Career development at University College can be reached by calling 928-523-4772 for an appointment or for the team's current walk-in hours. If you are a College of Engineering, Forestry, and Natural Sciences major, email elizabeth.glass@nau.edu. That's ELIZABETH